Good afternoon and welcome to Gulfstream Park and welcome back to Gulfstream today. It is an action-packed Saturday afternoon and well, we've had a lot of them so far this championship meet. Of course, Pegasus World Cup Day, Holy Bull Day. There have been several big days, but I don't think any have really equated the competitiveness of this card.
Just top to bottom, we have 9 stakes today, 8 of them graded, and even the so-called undercard races, some really competitive maiden special weights as well. It just, as I said, from start to finish, it's a tough day, but a bettor's dream, I would say.
It is definitely a bettor's dream. It gave us a lot of hours kind of hitting the books.
Oh, yeah.
My eyes were crisscrossed for a couple of days, but looking forward to a huge day on tap here at Gulfstream. Of course, 9 stakes races totaling in $1.5 million. But we wanted to backtrack before we get into today's card and go to yesterday. Yesterday was Beat the Expert Day, and I think we're getting better and better at this, Acacia.
Heating up.
Yesterday, I managed to get 4 winners, and we only had 2 winners in Beat the Expert Day, so congratulations to those winners. The first of the 2 winners, Michael Debasi, I would say, and then we have Blake Iliopoulos. I think I pronounced those correctly. Congratulations. It was a tough day, and they managed to get several winners and beat the expert. Now, looking to today, Acacia, we've got a lot of stuff going on, so we have to dive right into it. We'll take a look at our wagering menu this afternoon, and we start things off in today's opener. Race 1, of course, kicks off that rolling super high 5. This bet takes place in every race of 7 or more betting interest. We have a carryover in that over $12,000. Race 1 also does start the 50-cent early pick 5. Acacia will take a look at that ticket. She has one to offer in race 1. We'll get to that momentarily. And looking towards a little bit later on the card, race 6 does kick off that ever popular 50-cent middle pick 4. It's in race 6 today. Don't forget it, because we've got 13 races on tap. Now we'll get to some of our guaranteed pools, and we have guarantees in all 3 of these wagers. We've got $600,000 in the late pick 4. We have $400,000 in the 20-cent Rainbow 6, and we do have $300,000 in the late pick 5. The late pick 4 and late pick 5 sequences, they are all stakes, so really, really competitive action here.
It is, and looking forward to seeing your tickets. I believe you have Rainbow 6 and late pick 4, and as you said, I'll take a stab at the 2 pick 5s.
We are fast and firm on the turf today with a first post set for noon, so we'll get to today's card, starting off with today's opener onto the main track at 1 mile and 1/8 for this really competitive allowance optional claiming event. We do have an even money favorite though in here, so did you single in the opener?
I did, and this is something that I don't normally do. I'm singling right off the bat, but trying to keep the early pick 5 ticket affordable so that I can spend a little bit later on in the late pick 5 with that really nice $300,000 guarantee. So singling, always dreaming to start things off. Second time in the barn of Todd Pletcher after a very impressive 11-length maiden score last time out. Then using 4 horses in the second race, another tough maiden special weight. Then 2 in the 4th race, which is where our stakes action starts in the grade 3, Here Comes the Bride. And then 3 in the 5th leg in the grade 3, Fred Hooper, $36.
A nice affordable ticket there, so use that as a kind of a base and do what you want with it. The one always dreaming though is even money on the morning line as we start the early pick 5 here, and I think rightly so. Not only is this horse showcase a lot of just raw talent, even as a 2-year-old, he definitely showcased his talent making his 3-year-old debut last time out at Tampa, and it's not that tough of a field that he faces today.
No, it's not, and that's why I did feel kind of confident singling, because you do kind of wonder how horses carry their form from Tampa races to Gulfstream, but I think that he finds a solid place for his his first start against winners. He came off of about a 5-month layoff too, moving from the Dominic Schettino barn to Todd Pletcher. He's beautifully bred. He's by Bodemeister. The dam was a grade 3 winner and second in the grade 1 Prioress as well. And just looking at some stats, Todd Pletcher second off the layoff on the dirt with maiden winners last time out. He wins nearly 30% of the time, and it's an ROI of more than $2. So I thought this would be the one in here.
He's going to be very tough, and I like the fact that you know, he's actually harnessed his speed a little bit better, stretching out to the mile and 40 yards where he was at Tampa last time out. But he's also shown a closing gear sprinting. He was running very fast races as a 2-year-old, so he is much the best. But of course, favorites do go down sometimes. And I guess as a backup plan, the 7 looking at Blessing for trainer Nick Zito. I thought this horse could be sitting the trip perhaps. He's previously shown a lot of speed, so maybe getting the ability to sit that stalking trip. He's been a big price in his past couple of starts. He's 5-1 on the morning line, which just shows you that this field isn't that deep, but we can't go without saying how well Nick Zito and Nick Juarez have been doing so far this meet.
They have, and he comes out of a very strong race too. Beasley we won't see in the Fountain of Youth today. He'll be going to Tampa instead, but he ran a huge race last time behind Battalion Runner, who does look to be the goods for Todd Pletcher and Painter's Rags, a nice Grand Motion horse. So he was coming out of a race against very tough company where it is a little bit more of a cushy spot in here. I do think he's better closer to the pace, so he could stalk a bit better today.
All right, let's get to the second race, a maiden special weight. We're going out to the turf at 7.5 furlongs. And I thought a competitive race in here as well. As we're kind of all over the map here, maybe in different order, but the number 9, Master Marion, is probably the horse to beat and probably the horse to catch for Wesley Ward.
Yes, he is. And honestly, I tried to look elsewhere in this field, trying to find a bit better of a price, and I just had a hard time picking against this horse. Looking at the work tab, looking at his first 2 races, and in his debut, he finished second, just 3/4 of a length behind Made You Look, a multiple graded stakes winner now. And last time out, he went off the favorite, finishing second behind Conquest Sure Shot. He actually saw a couple of next out winners come out of that race, including Oscar Performance. That was in Belmont and Saratoga, so he hasn't raced in about 7 months. But again, looking with some stats, Wesley Ward, after 180-plus day layoff on the turf, taking the blinkers off. It's a sample size of 20 horses, and he's 45% win and 70% in the money, and still an ROI of more than $3. So this horse might be a short price today, but I did have a hard time picking against him.
You could probably even single him if you like him that much, and those stats do back that up. He draws a good outside post position considering his ability to show speed from the get-go, and I think that is key. And Jose Ortiz has acclimated as well here as he has everywhere else that he's been riding. So this is the horse to beat. I just had kind of a horse that comes out of a bad trip last time out who I liked physically going into the last race, and I do think that he's one that should improve with added distance or just 2 turns on the turf, really. They brought him back off of the layoff since Keeneland. They sprinted him at 5/8, and it didn't look like he wanted any bit of that. He's not a 5 furlong sprinter, but they gave him some distance, and he just had a awful trip. So I'd be upset if this horse happened to win at 8-1. And after watching that race, I said to myself, you know what, when he comes back, I'm definitely going to be betting him. So that was kind of the story behind the 8 Sharm El Sheikh, but the 9 Master Marion is definitely the horse to beat. You did have some interest in the 2 Want to Be a Player. He's a beautiful looking horse.
He really is, and honestly, he hasn't done anything wrong in his 2 starts so far, both of them here at Gulfstream, going the 7.5, beaten just a neck both times, and last time he was really wide as well, and it was kind of just a lot of horses, blanket finish at the wire too.
The third race on the card, a maiden special weight, 1 mile and a 16th onto the main track. And we do have, the usual suspects in here. We've got Todd Pletcher, Bill Mott, Ian Wilkes, Jimmy Toner, Shug McGahee, even Roger outfield to the outside here. But you land on the 1, Blind Ambition, making his 2nd start. And we didn't show the replay here, but really bad beginning last time.
It was a very tough stumble coming out of the gate, then was just towards the back early. This 3-year-old by Tappet. He's getting some more distance too, going from the 7 furlongs to the 1 mile and a 16th here, and he still managed 4th last time out. Looking for 8, actually won that race very nicely that day. So I'm giving him another try today. Hopefully he gets a better break from the rail post position,
And
too.
he kind of fell out of the gate, and then his nose grazed immediately coming out of it. It took him a couple of strides to recover, and then unfortunately he overcompensated for that poor beginning, because then he seemed a little rank under Johnny Velasquez and rushed up, met the field, and then he tired coming down the stretch. It's a lot of moves, not only for a first-time starter, but a first-time starter at 7 furlongs with all that trouble. So he is probably the horse to beat in here, but the 7 Super Buddy, when I saw him first time out, he just had, you know, the physical appearance that he would like at a distance. And he comes out of a pretty good race. We saw Patch come back and win. We saw Impressive Edge. He was okay, facing much tougher in his next start. And the thing that I thought was interesting, we never know what goes on behind the scenes. Johnny Velasquez was aboard Blind Ambition in his first start. Now he reroutes to Super Buddy.
He does, and of course you always like to see a horse that John Velasquez is in the saddle for, and as you said, that was a good race. Patch got a 90 Beyer speed figure in his next race, breaking his maiden with added distance. I agree. I think this horse is really going to appreciate the stretch out. A horse that I've been waiting to see come back, though, is the number 8 Eastport for Shug McGahee. Another one stretching out, was just really far back early last time out, but did have some late run. I love the pedigree as well for this one, so giving him another shot, but I used all 3 of these horses on my pick 5 ticket.
I like that maiden special weight a lot, but we'll get to our graded stakes action. This is race 4, the grade 3. Here comes the bride. We're heading out to the turf at a mile and a 16th, and it is the return. We have some really nice returns to the races today, and Kosid is, of course, one of them. Looking forward to her return. We actually saw her paddock schooling just a couple of days ago, or was it yesterday?
I think it was yesterday.
It was
they all
yesterday.
blend together sometimes.
Sorry, it's been a long week. Kosid, she looked fantastic in the flesh here, but we wanted to go back and show you the last time that we saw her, and that was in the Breeders' Cup.
This was the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf, and she's the number 6 that day. She was actually last early, but for the sake of time, we're picking up at the quarter pole. She kind of came through along the rail, so just try to keep your eyes on the number 6 there. New Money Honey, the winner of this race, of course, was on the outside, but I thought it was very tenacious from Kosid. She's kind of weaving through, and then there she is coming towards the wire. She ended up being beaten by only half a length in there, so making that inside move, which is not always an easy move to do, especially for those young fillies. I thought it was a very game performance, and she's been a horse that I've always kind of had reservations about, but she's really just kept proving herself, I think, in each subsequent start.
See, I'm on the opposite side of the spectrum. I've always really liked her, and sometimes I actually wouldn't say that she's ever really disappointed, because when probably the only time she disappointed was on the Yielding Going in the Miss Grillo, but the Breeders' Cup was a very weird race for her in that she was taken so far off the pace. She's a horse that wants to be kind of positioned in the mid-pack, and she's extremely game. We saw her kind of weave in and out of traffic, try to get up for the victory. If she had the same trip as New Money Honey, she probably would have won by a length. It just went to show the tenacity that she shows. I think my favorite race of hers was in the P.G. Johnson, and she had a similar trip, but she actually managed to win that one.
She did, and she did win by a length that day. She was the heavy favorite in that race after that explosive maiden win. It just seemed like everything really clicked when she switched over to the turf, and we've seen Leah Giamatti do a great job with her. And as you said, I think you cross out the Miss Grillo, where she still finished 3rd behind New Money Honey and Rimska, who we saw to come back and take graded stakes company here at Gulfstream about a month ago. So it's not like she's ever really run a bad race.
Now, the biggest concern is the layoff.
Of course.
And, of course, looking at Leah Giamatti, and this is kind of I look at Kosid as maybe the exception, not the rule. Leah Giamatti, with these types of layoffs on the turf, going a distance of ground, she is 0 for 16. So do take that into consideration. But as I said, she is a very talented horse. She was precocious. She should be able to fire off the layoff. She looked fantastic in the walking ring. But Dream Dancing's last race was extremely impressive, and if she can build upon that race at all, I think she might give Kosid a run for her money. If you go back to that last race, it was especially strong because the pace setters in that field, they held. Chubby Star was the pace setter. She went quickly, but it was a speed favoring turf that day, and she ran down everybody like they were tied to a pole.
And if you notice, I did not single Kosid in here. I used Dream Dancing as well because all of her turf starts are good. If you cross off the dirt performances, not to mention they were all graded stakes, grade 1, grade 2 events on the dirt. And even the Pocahontas was not really that bad, but all of her turf starts are very solid. In her maiden debut, she did finish second to Coasted, but then she seems to be a filly that's just kind of steadily improved. And I agree, I thought that last race was very competitive, and I thought it was very strong performance from her.
And she didn't get off to a great start in her first start going against Coasted, but we'll show a stat here for trainer Mark Cassidy. Second off the layoff, going a distance of ground on the turf against Graded Stakes Company. 6 for 29, 21%, a positive ROI of $3.46, finishing in the money 34% of the time. So you have a stat there that kind of backs that up. But I also thought, before we move on to another race, I really like the 5 Happy Mesa as a long shot in here, because Graham Motion and the Connections, they privately purchased her off of trainer Hammy Smith after winning the Salima, and they felt confidently enough to step her into grade 1 waters in the Breeders' Cup. And if you go back to the grade 3 at Del Mar last time out, it was really bad weather, high winds, and actually there were white foam pads all scattered throughout the turf course, and horses just kind of scattered throughout everywhere going into the first turn, and she was one of them. So they've given her a freshening since then. I would expect one of her better performances today.
And she's shipping in after her last 3 races in California, but she's been working well on the Palm Meadows turf course too. And Florent Giroux back aboard, he did ride her in the Surfer Girl, which I thought was a pretty solid performance from her in her first start for the Connections. And Graham Motion has 2 in here, including the number 6 Party Boat, and maybe some of those horses to use in exotics for a nice price in here.
Let's get to the 5th race on the card, the grade 3 Fred Hooper. We're going the 1-turn mile onto the main track. And I thought that this was a little bit of a competitive race. Of course, we have War Story, who's 5-2 on the morning line. Greenpoint Crusader, who is your favorite here for trainer Todd Pletcher. And before we get into this race, you and I both betting against Greenpoint Crusader. But the stats are strong for Todd Pletcher, and we will show this stat. Second off the layoff on the dirt against Graded Stakes Company going long at Gulfstream. So a very specific stat. He's 33% positive ROI, finishing over half of the time in the money. So this horse could easily win. We saw Flashy Jewel come back out to win a starter race, getting an 89 Beyer speed figure. I just didn't think he beat much in his last race.
I didn't either, and I think that we both kind of picked against him last time out in his first race off the layoff, because you were kind of wondering, was he just an incredibly precocious horse that really just came and exploded out onto the scene and won the grade 1 Champagne? What I think is the key is that I think he's strongest at the mile distance, and that's where he stays today. He did come back. I don't think he met the most troublesome field last time out. He did get the win off the layoff, and he looked good paddock schooling the other day. There's certainly not really much to knock about him. Just you never really kind of know what you can trust.
Other than the fact that he beat 4 other starter allowance horses in his last race. But he did get a 94 Beyer speed figure, and that was his first race off of the layoff. But what I'm saying is that it wasn't much. That said, the 7 War Story, he faced Arrogate last time out.
He did, and he was 5th in the grade 1 Pegasus World Cup. So you certainly can't say to him, well, who did he beat and what did he face? Now, the concern I have for him is the opposite of Greenpoint Crusader. I'm actually kind of concerned about the mile distance, and speaking to trainer Jorge Navarro yesterday, that is one of the concerns that they have too. But he actually only had this horse for 3 weeks before the Pegasus, and even with all of that, he does have some talent. He's changed barns a ton of times. He's got some early pace to him as well, so I'll be interested to see what he does tactically, but I do think you kind of have to give him another look after that last race.
But we both did go to the 4 Birdsong, who does figure to be the pace in here, and what I liked about his performance in the How's Hope, not only was he coming off a layoff since November, but he also dueled on the front end with a horse by the name of Dolphus, who is a half to Rachel Alexander. That's besides the point, but he dueled on the front end with Dolphus. Dolphus, I think, finished last in that race, and this horse was really game to just hang on for second while Tommy Macho ran off the screen after a little bit of a trouble trip. But he did look like he was getting a bit weary. Maybe he needed that race under his belt, and I hope that he's just the one to catch in here.
And physically, I remember off the layoff last time, he just really did look the part, and I thought he performed really well. As you said, there was no beating Tommy Macho that day, even with all the trouble that he encountered.
The Sand Springs is up next. That is race 6 on today's card. hard, and this does kick off the 50-cent middle pick 4. Do take note of that. We're going to the mile on the turf, and this race really does revolve around 2 horses, especially with some of the scratches in here. We have the return of the number 5, Catch a Glimpse, and of course, Celestine, now trained by Christophe Clement.
And I suppose we should start with Catch a Glimpse and go back and show actually the last time that she won. This was just a string of victories in a row. This is on July 9th at Belmont in the Grade 1 at Belmont Oaks. And you can see how wide she is, but how she shoots out of the gate because she is drawn in post number 12 that day. And she has an incredible amount of gate speed. And now we're getting to the stretch. This is when Time and Motion almost caught her. Of course, next time out at Saratoga in the Lake Placid, Time and Motion did catch her and get the win and break that win streak, but certainly there's absolutely no knocking her. She did win in graded stakes company against the boys as well, and now making her return in 2017.
And I know going into the Belmont Oaks, there was a lot of reservations about whether or not she could get the 1.25 miles, because previously she's always been known as maybe a really strong miler, or kind of in that middle distance of 7.5 furlongs mile, even 1.16 miles. So her performance in the Belmont Oaks was extremely impressive, but that was followed by her defeat in the Lake Placid. And it almost looked like she was heartbroken from that performance, because that was her first defeat on the turf, actually. She was defeated on the dirt previously, but so I don't know if she ever was the same horse after that particular performance. That said, it also looked like at the end of her 3-year-old campaign, her campaign was catching up to her a little bit. So they did the right thing, gave her some time coming back, and we saw her paddock schooling earlier this week. She just looks like a bigger horse and a calmer horse, because if you remember, she's always been one to stay with the pony. She's very fussy, finicky in the afternoon. So that's going to be something that I'll definitely be paying attention to in the paddock, how she behaves.
It will be interesting to see once they get the saddle on with all the other horses and she gets back towards the starting gate, because of course Breeders' Cup Fillies and Mare Turf and the QE2, her last 2 starts after that defeat at Saratoga were disappointing performances, but she had a very tough, very productive, but a very tough 2016, so certainly no knocking her talent. But we both go to the number 8 Celestine, as you said, first time for Christophe Clement.
And she's just, you look at this smaller field now with the scratches, 2 key scratches of the 9, My Sweet Girl, and the 6, Ms. Money. Celestine, she's probably, I don't know if she's as fast as Catch a Glimpse, but she is very fast, especially on this turf course here. She's shown an affinity for this turf course. She's a 3-time winner. Christophe Clement, this is a good angle for him, just first-time acquisitions coming off these types of layoffs, this distance on the turf. So she's got the credentials in order to win here. And I don't know, I like the post position. I like the fact that she should be able to really have Catch a Glimpse in her crosshairs the entire way.
I totally agree, and that's why I like her as well. And she's a Grade 1 winner. She ran at the 6.5 furlongs at Santa Anita last time out in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint facing the boys. First of all, I don't think she wanted any part of that 6.5 downhill race, and it was, as I said, facing the boys that day. But she absolutely just has so much talent, and even when she was defeated 2 starts back, she was running against the likes of Photocall and Tepin. So it's not really like she was ashamed in defeat at all. So she'll get my nod today as well. Jose Ortiz in the saddle.
And I actually thought that the move to run her in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint was forgivable, because 6.5 on the downhill is a very odd distance, in that it favors almost milers more than sprinters, those 5/8 sprinters. So I didn't think it was a wrong move, but it clearly didn't pan out too good. So they did give her some time, and she definitely has a back class. I think you can have faith in maybe just sticking between those 2, well, 1 filly and 1 mare, as we get to the 7th race. Oh, we're not going to get to the 7th race. We're going to take a quick... No, we are going to get to the 7th race here. Man, these 13 races.
Count on your fingers.
We're going 1 mile and 3/16 on the turf for the very one. And Olorda is another one who's coming back off of the shelf. We haven't seen her since last spring at Keeneland.
We haven't, but she's coming back to defend her title. She did win the very one last March here at Gulfstream, and then she went on to win the Grade 3 Bewitched at Keeneland after that, but it's been about 10 months since we've seen her, but she has some very sharp works on the Palmettos turf course for Chad Brown, and after 180-plus day layoff with winners last time out, he's about 28% wins, 64% in the money, and a nearly even ROI. He does excellent work getting horses off the bench.
He absolutely does. And if you told me looking back to last year's the very one, and if you would have asked me who was going to be setting the pace in there, by no means would I have ever said Olorda. But they've kind of trained speed into her, I think, because she just kept on getting in so much trouble closing from off of the pace. So now she doesn't have to worry about that because she's been on the lead for her last two victories. So I like her tactically. I like the rail post position. I like the fact that she's got speed. I have no worry about the horse coming off of a layoff, but Suffused, she sits atop a very impressive performance in the La Proviante last time out, which we wanted to go back and show the stretch run here. She was just so much the best.
And she was wide coming from post 12 that day. You can see her in the Juddmonte colors, and she just came running so strongly. And as you said, she was much the best. She's got a great record at this mile in 3/16 distance too. 6 starts, 2 wins, and 3 seconds. And she was coming off of a defeat in the EP Taylor, but she was beaten by Al's Gal by just a nose. And then she really came and backed that up off a bit of a freshening from October to January. Off of the layoff, she really just blew away an impressive field, I thought.
And I give a lot of credit to Jose Ortiz for that win, too, because she is a mare that has been known to maybe get back a little bit too far off of the pace, and he put her in the absolute perfect position at the half-mile pole. He started to ride her a little early, and then at the quarter pole, she was set and ready to go. All he really needed to do was ask her. So, Suffused, she is the class, but for Bill Mott winning last out on the turf and graded stakes at Gulfstream, he is only 2 for 17. But, again, this is another, I don't like to show these stats because sometimes these are the exceptions, not necessarily the rules. I know you and I are kind of like the 5 try your luck. Unfortunately, she is a scratch, so you did default to the 4 Earring, who we saw paddock schooling.
I did, and that's one of the things I did like the way that she looked paddock schooling. Now she has some speed. She'll have to either sit just behind the speed of Olorda, and hopefully they won't go out to the front and kill each other, but she won that allowance at Tampa last time out, beaten just a nose, 2 starts back in the Grade 3 Long Island.
Now we're going to take that break, and when we come back, we'll dive into the 20-cent Rainbow 6, Pick 5, and Late Pick 4. All have pretty nice guarantees right after this.
At ExpressBet, we celebrate the champions that make horse racing great. That's why we provide more ways to bet from more places than ever. We've built an entire family of brands to give players more of the rewards they deserve, give bettors the information they need to win, and provide a community for horse bettors. Because the best way to support the champions of horse racing is to champion horse racing. ExpressBet. We are racing.
Welcome back to Gulfstream. Today, race 8 kicks off the 20-cent Rainbow 6, and we'll go now to my ticket. Wanted to show you this ticket, $72, very affordable considering the guarantee we have today is $400,000 in that Pick 6 guarantee. I will be singling on Heart to Heart. The rest is self-explanatory. This is a very, very difficult race. I thought the Devonadale was an extremely competitive race. I thought the Fountain of Youth was extremely competitive. The McDarmida, very, very good racing today. So we'll start it off with a wide open maiden special weight. We've got a lot of first-time starters as well. This is 7 furlongs onto the main track, and we both did land on the 13 timeline. Chad Brown actually sends out a pair in here, but this one, a very, very nice pedigree. Javier Castellano in the saddle.
Timeline by Hard Spun, and the dam was well beaten in her 2 starts on the synthetic, but this is her first foal. If you go back a little bit in the pedigree, second dam was a grade 1 winner as well. And I like the work tap. He's coming off a couple of very sharp works in here. He also has the number 8 Texican, so that's where I land in here. Chad Brown, first time starter on the dirt. A little bit of a question, but this one looks like he's ready to fire.
I'm really happy that this is the first leg of the pick 6 because we can take a good look at some of these horses in the paddock as well. But do take note of some of the workout patterns leading into this race. Timeline definitely showcases a positive work tab, but we also have another lovely pedigree in the 13, Fayek to the outside for Karen McLaughlin. And this horse, the name actually translates to extraordinary. We'll see if he is extraordinary in his debut. Obviously a half-brother to the great Rachel Alexandra.
So certainly extraordinary when it comes to pedigree. This one by Malibu Moon. And of course, the dam Latakin, she was grade 2 place, won it first asking. Dolphus, who we were mentioning earlier, did win it first asking as well. So we'll see about this one, but we do see from the barn, Karen McLaughlin maybe taking a little bit more of a patient approach.
We'll get into that a little bit more later because we got to roll right along. We'll get to the 9th race on the card. It does kick off the 50-cent late pick 5 here. 1 mile and a 16th on the turf for the grade 3 Palm Beach. Acacia, how did you see the late pick 5?
All right, well, I almost singled Heart to Heart and ended up using 2 horses in there. I tried to keep this affordable at $54, but it was not easy. So using 3 horses here in the Palm Beach, just going to go 2 deep in the 10th in the Devona Dale, using Projected and Heart to Heart. Projected, of course, first U.S. start for Chad Brown. Then 3 and 3 in the Fountain of Youth, $54. We do have that nice guarantee of $300,000 in the pick 5.
Okay, the Palm Beach, these very nice 3-year-olds, some of them making their 3-year-old debut, and one of them being the number 9, Ticonderoga. Last time we saw this horse was in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. I think this is a horse that you definitely have to use. He ran a huge race last time out in the Breeders' Cup. He just wasn't very fast out of the gate, and I don't know if it was because of him or because Rafael Bejarano really didn't ask him to get into position early.
He kind of looked kind of uncomfortable coming out of the gate too, and maybe that might have been what it was. He did have a problem breaking slow 2 starts back in the grade 3 Bourbon where he kind of was cut off at the break, I think, too, but he was just far back along the rail in that race as well. And then last time out, he was way behind the rest of the field, but he was closing very wide and did manage to get 4th there. So some interest in him certainly off the layoff. He's a must-use, but at a little reservations putting him on top today.
The 5, Snap Decision, was where you did land, facing not only graded stakes company for the first time, but also facing winners for the first time.
And what I just really like about this horse is that I think he's been steadily improving for Shug McGahee. Now, he won and broke his maiden last time out from a Beyer speed figure. He's been improving. And then really just from the way that he's physically been running, each start he's gotten better. And he will certainly have to run the best race of his life so far today. But I do think he's moving in the right direction.
He seems like a very handy horse. Last time out, I was pretty shocked that Jose Ortiz could put the horse in the right position from the get-go. Looks like a horse that has a lot of raw talent, and so does the One Cowboy Culture. And we haven't seen Brad Cox ship a lot of horses to Gulfstream. I actually looked up on Formulator. I couldn't find the last time that he was actually here, at least with a turf horse. So he's got confidence with him, and he said he was looking at 2 positions to potentially run this horse, one at Turfway and then this one. And he said, we're just going to keep him on the turf. And the funny thing about his races, he doesn't win by much, but he always wins with a lot of confidence, and it's like he's toying with his competition, that he could draw away from them, but he doesn't necessarily want to. So he comes out of good races. He's got a good running style, considering his post position. So I have faith in him, and Florent Giroux shipping in this afternoon for potentially a very nice day.
It is, and he's ridden him in all 3 starts. Of course, he is flattered by the fact that the horse he beat last time out, he switched back to the dirt, but he did go on to win grade 2 in the Risen Star, and that's Garvin, who got a 93 Beyer speed figure for that. And Brad Cox, I believe he had Spelling again here in the summer, and she is graded stakes winner and did win here on Summit of Speed Day. So, and when he does ship, it's probably for good reason.
Exactly. And the 4 Kittens Cat, I actually really thought I've been, I have not really been a big fan of
Neither have
Kitten's
I.
Cat, but it's clear that he needed a race in the Dania Beach because he was really impressive last time out. So I will be using him for exacta purposes. We'll get to the Grade 2 Devona Dale going the 1-turn mile on the main track. This does kick off the late pick 4 though, and once again we do have a big guarantee in the late pick 4 of $600,000. I'll quickly show you my ticket. It's affordable. It's $20, so there's no need to not play at least a ticket. You don't necessarily need to play this one. I thought the Devona Dale was so difficult. Any horse could win here. So spreading in this leg, or in this leg of the sequence, it's keying off of the 3 Heart to Heart, and the next spreading with just 2 in the Fountain of Youth with Takafel and Irish Worker.
Irish Worker.
As we get to the 10th, though, here, we'll start things off. And wanted to go back and show you the video spotlight replay of Miss Sky Warrior winning the Demoiselle. That was last time out, but that was also back in November.
It was back in November. It was at a mile and an eighth, and it was at Aqueduct. But this is a horse who's coming off of a 3-race win streak, and she's 5-1 that day. She gets out to the front. She had some company at the quarter pole, and then she did pull away. She kind of drifted off the rail to when Paco Lopez did start going left-handed with the whip, but Jameson and Ginger is closing in the center of the track, but Miss Sky Warrior was game to hold on, and as I said, that was 9 furlongs. I do think she might be a bit better at the mile. She won the Grade 3 Tempted prior to that at the mile after just an explosive 7-length maiden score at Parks prior to that, but she's really backed that up with 2 nice races.
And that race is funny in the Demoiselle, and maybe it was the 9 furlongs on the main track, but it was almost workmanlike. She was really grinding it out there, and just obviously game enough to hold off the likes of Jameson and Ginger, but she looks like she's had a very steady work tab. I always do have some reservations with horses coming off that lengthy of a layoff here. We've seen other horses who needed one over the track, and one of them maybe being the 12 Pretty City Dancer. She came off of a layoff in September after winning or dead heating in the Spinaway, and the blinkers go on her today, and I think that is very key, because if you go back to the Spinaway, she was almost leaning on Sweet Loretta, and that's where the bumping action came in the deep part of the stretch, and that's where the dead heat came from. So the blinkers go on, in my opinion, to probably help her show a little bit more speed so she doesn't have to close so much, and to stay a straight course and not have to pay so much attention to her competitors.
And that's definitely probably a positive for her in here, putting those blinkers on. But she was kind of, the top 2 were in the center of the track last time out as well, and she did close last time, kind of following the winner along, Tecalita, an upset winner of that race after Miss Locust Point was setting the pace. So I like her certainly second off the layoff. Unfortunately, she does have that far outside post in here. Mark Cassidy also has the number 1 Summer Luck, who I thought actually ran a sneaky good race last time out in the Forward Gal as well. Continues to stretch out in distances. Florent Giroux again climbing aboard. This is actually the distance where she broke her maiden. She kind of had to angle back and trying to close. Again, everybody kind of drifting out to the center of the track last time.
It's very clear that both these horses want more distance because they just can't get into their momentum in time before the race stops. So I think added distance is going to only help them. But the 5, yes, I'll go. This horse I've been staring at for since we drew entries, and I said, you know what? Whatever, I'm just going to go with her because she has excuses. I don't really believe the 90 by her speed figure that she got in her first start, but it was an explosive win. Yes, it wasn't against much, but she visually looked so impressive. And then she came back and she faced Stakes Company in the house party behind Bodie's Dream and Wildcat Kate. A, I don't think she liked the conditions of the surface that day, and B, she was chasing on a day that heavily favored speed. We saw Bodie's Dream and Wildcat Kate go 1-2 around the entire track, and then she came back to win on probably a surface that she doesn't prefer last time out at Ocala. So I think she's got her wheels turning. Of course, Armando de la Cerda now trains this filly for the same owners that owned Latia, who Armando trained to actually win a couple of graded stakes. So I'm just taking a shot in here with a horse that figures to be on the lead.
And that's the key. I do think that she'll have that speed. She showed that speed. I remember when she broke her maiden at Gulfstream Park West, and it seemed like this horse just came out of nowhere. We were expecting a good race after what was a really sensational work tab at that time, and I spoke to Jorge Navarro Alfaro, who trained her at the time, and he said, yes, we expected an explosive victory from her and expect her to keep getting better.
Very, very difficult race to kick off the final pick 4 here. We could talk about that for probably an hour, but we don't have that. We've got about 6 minutes as we get to the 11th race here, the Grade 3 Canadian Turf. We're going out to the mile here, and this is another tough race, but I think that the 3 Heart to Heart does have tactical advantage, and he looks like he's a lone speed, and I like the cutback in distance for him.
I do too. I much prefer him at the 7.5 or the mile on the turf. And last time out, he did kind of weaken a little bit to finish 4th. It wasn't a terrible performance by any means. I just thought he was so game 2 starts back with flatlined closing at that 7.5 furlongs in the El Prado. Flatline, of course, did kind of set up for him to close last time out and get the win in the Fort Lauderdale. So Heart to Heart, really like him. You know he's going to be on the front end, and he's an easy horse to root for.
He is an easy horse to root for. In the 2 projected, you throw him in second in here for Chad Brown, making his United States debut and hasn't been seen since September of 2015. I think the biggest concern for me here is the fact that it's such a short run into the first turn. This is a horse who is making his North American debut, and he had an amazing record on the synthetic, but I thought his performances on the synthetic overseas were a little bit stronger than his turf races.
They were, and that's actually something I was pretty curious about too. Why does he come back and end up on the turf here? Now, I do think that kind of just looking at his races in Europe, it looked like a lot of the times he didn't perform as well on a softer going. The synthetic or a firmer turf did seem to be more to his liking, so that's definitely a firm turf what he's going to get here today. He's been working really sharply on the Palm Meadows turf course, and Chad Brown just does so well with foreign shippers, getting them ready to come for their first U.S. race.
We have to move on, unfortunately. I'll talk about Conquest Panthera later on today. The race 12, the Grade 2 McDarmida, 1 mile and 3/8 on the turf. And this was the race that was probably the biggest head scratcher of all. As you can see, we are kind of all over the map here. But I thought a key scratch of the 9 to Glebe, who I actually used in second in here. But you did go to the 7 Bigger Picture, and we want to go back a few starts for Bigger Picture, back to the Grade 3 Red Smith, where he did face Danish Dynaformer and Wake Forest.
So this includes a couple horses in here. So we're going to pick it up in the stretch starting at the quarter pole. But Bigger Picture kind of got open racetrack, which I do think was really key for him. Danish Dynaformer closing on the outside. He's the 11. And you see Wake Forest did have to kind of steady a little bit, the number 8 in there. And he's between horses. So he's kind of trying to carve out a trip. The 3 of them coming down towards the wire, just really keeping on as Bigger Picture did get the win. Now, an interesting kind of move for Bigger Picture. He then went to the dirt to try the Claiming Crown Jewel, which did not work out at all. Went back to the turf, won a Grade 3 the next time, and now he's sticking with the turf in here.
And I like the fact that he can take his form wherever he goes. Last time out, obviously, Aqueduct, Keeneland, Monmouth, Saratoga, really everywhere this horse goes, he runs a really good race. So I used him on the bottom half of my ticket, and then with the scratch of Taglebe, I actually picked him up a little bit because he does sit on a good race last time out, and like I said, he can take his form wherever he goes. This will be the first time getting to the Gulfstream Park turf as well. But the 6, Mr. Maybe, I like the fact that he gets to a firm course today. I think that's key because he doesn't necessarily like it. He unfortunately got caught behind Heart to Heart going wire to wire in the Knickerbocker 2 starts back, and obviously in the United Nations he didn't like the conditions of that surface either. He beat Company in the Johns Call over the summer. I thought it was an okay race, but his last race was so bad, unfortunately. He was the beaten favorite, but he was stuck inside on the rail. And Javier Castellano actually doing the right thing, trying to save ground. He just was unfortunate that he didn't find any room throughout the stretch. So you have to cross a line through that. I don't say that very often, but you do, because this horse never had one breath to run.
And unfortunately, that's just been really the worst race that he's run, but that was such a tough field too, going the a mile and a half in the McKnight. Quickly want to mention another horse that does come out of there who had really stepped up in class, but I think Patterson Cross to the outside is steadily improving, ran a fantastic race in the McKnight last time out, and might be one to include who promises to be a bit of a price.
I loved his race last time out because he's lightly raced. Obviously, he's pretty quick too, but he actually hung on pretty gamely considering kind of the fractions that were posted early. He was caught in that awkward kind of chasing position, but a very, very competitive race as we get to the headliner of today, the marquee race, the Grade 2 Fountain of Youth. We're going a mile and a 16th onto the main track, of course, and we should go back first and foremost and start with the Holy Bull, and obviously looking at Irish War Cry getting the victory.
And Guinevere was second that day. They'll kind of rematch here today. Irish War Cry ended up kind of being the lone speed that day. There was a scratch of another horse that promised to show some speed. Just remember, he looks like such a more physically mature horse, mentally mature horse. Now, he did drift a little bit in the stretch, showing he was still pretty green, but Guinevere had a tough trip. He did have to kind of tap the brakes a couple times rounding the turn, and he ran on very strongly and very gamely to be second. Here's where you can see there is still some greenness in Irish War Cry, kind of going a little bit all over the place in the stretch there that day. Joel Rosario trying to keep him focused and make it to the wire, but I thought a very good performance from him, now undefeated.
And there are obviously positives and negatives. There are pros and cons to Irish War Cry. The con is that last time out, with the scratch of the horse who figured to be the pace setter in there, he was on the lead and he managed to go a very slow pace on the front end, and everybody was just kind of chasing him in his wake. On top of that, another con was that he did only just beat O Dionysus, a horse in the Mid-Atlantic at Laurel, who came back to win the Miracle Wood with a 77 Beyer speed figure. But the pros is the potential that this horse could improve. And he clearly showed that he could improve on the big stage last time out. And one thing to focus on too, when you and I were trackside, Guinevere and Classic Empire, they were absolutely washed out behind the gate. They were acting up. They were not acting very professionally. Irish War Cry was absolutely unflappable, and I think that is extremely key when you get kind of a lightly raced horse that is continuing to progress.
I do too, and I think that his maturity, as I mentioned earlier, really stood out that day. He did also get Lasix for the first time last time out. He kept his record unblemished. I also thought he appreciated the added distance too, so do really like him in here. You noted I didn't single him. Thought there were a couple other horses that were of interest in here today. You like the 10 Tacklefull for Kieran McLaughlin, coming out of a bad trip last time, but I really don't think he liked the mud in the Jerome.
Well, I don't think it's only that. I think he needs to harness his speed a little bit better, because he's just been known to go out there kind of winging and dinging and just can't finish strongly. But I like the confidence that Kieran McLaughlin has in this horse in running him in the Fountain of Youth since a layoff, since the Jerome. I mean, he obviously has confidence in him. He has speed, which I think is key. I don't think Irish War Cry will be on the front end today. I think he's going to have to show a rating gear. And Paco Lopez was aboard for his most recent bullet work. And I also think that's key, because Kieran McLaughlin actually saying a couple days ago that he really liked how Paco got along with this horse during that breeze. So maybe all things are coming together, and at 12-1, I'm going to take a shot, because he was so impressive in his first start.
I think so too, and actually kind of conversely to what you were just saying, I think that Tacklefull might sit a little bit off of the pace. Speaking to Kieran McLaughlin yesterday, we saw Paco Lopez do this with another one of his horses, Dickinson, a couple weeks ago that we thought would show speed. He took her off the pace and managed to get the win that day, and I have a sneaky feeling that that might kind of be what happens with Tacklefull today, trying to get him to settle a bit. And Kieran did say he was really happy with how Paco handled this horse, and sometimes that is where the magic happens. I like him in this spot too. We should probably talk about Practical Joke, a horse that's been getting a lot of attention, but does have some concerns.
And we wanted to go back to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile to kind of just show the first half of the race, and then just after that at the quarter pole. But going into the first turn, You could argue that he did get jostled around a bit. You know, he was towards the outside, but I thought he recovered quickly. Then he did get a little bit headstrong, and maybe that was because he was overcompensating for the break that he just did.
He does, and we'll show going around the turn as he just totally blew the turn, too. He's out now in the center of the racetrack, and he did look a bit headstrong. Now he ends up finishing third behind Classic Empire, Not This Time, who were much the best, the top two in this race. I kind of like this horse better at one turn, to be honest, versus the two turns, versus going a little bit longer. You can certainly say, oh, well, he was third in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile behind a runaway top two, and he's there, but then he kind of just stops as the other two do go on.
And it is worth noting, too, his pedigree. You know, we always like to talk about pedigrees leading into the Kentucky Derby, whether or not we think that they can go the distance. He is off of a layoff. I think this is going to be a useful race looking forward, but he's by Into Mischief, heavy sprint sire, and on the bottom side, too, the mare was an all sprint. She didn't go much farther than, I think she didn't even go two turns. So a sprint pedigree from top to bottom. So obviously the argument would come about how far do you think he can go?
And that's one of my concerns about him. I actually didn't even end up using him in the pick 5, but of course you do have to take note of what comes out of the Chad Brown barn. But I thought the Fountain of Youth came up very, very tough this year, and really excited to see how it shakes out.
And that's a wrap for us here. We just talked about 13 races, so we're going to go drink some water and take a couple of breaths. Pete Aiello will be up next with those scratches and changes. Best of luck on this fantastic card.
We have to take care of these horses that, give us so much joy.